Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's tutorial, I will be showing you how to make pleats on the neckline of a dress or a top. If this sounds like something you're interested in learning, please watch to the end of this video. So for this, you need your basic bodice pattern. I have a half block of my basic bodice pattern. If you don't know how to draft a basic bodice pattern, I'll drop a link in the description box on how you can go about that. So this pattern, I've already added my allowances on it. My sewing allowance have been added. The first thing I'm going to do is to connect my darts completely to the bust line. Usually we stop our front darts an inch before the bust line, but here I'm connecting it all the way up to the bust line. So for clarity purpose, I'm going to label this is my bust point line and I have my waist line. So from the bust line, I'll come down by 2.5 inches for my underarm darts. I'm taking an underarm dart for this. So the underarm dart you take is the difference between your front half length and your back half length. If you don't know how to do this, I'll drop a link in the description box on a bustier where I took an underarm dart. So you just watch that and understand what I just explained. So I'm going to close up my waist dart, so I'm cutting through one of the dart legs, and to enable me close up this dart, I'm going to cut open the underarm dart so that I can be able to close my waist dart. So now that I've cut this open, it will be easier for me to close up my waist dart. So I'm going to close them and hold it down with a tape. I'm going to close it with a tape. So that's what I'm doing here. Then I'm going to make slash lines from the neckline to my bust line. So the first thing I'll do will be to measure 1.5 inches away from the center front on the neckline. So this is not constant. You can measure 1 inch away from the center front and then take the same measurements 3 points. I'm measuring, my distance is 1.5 inches apart. So the first point, I'm going to connect it to the apex of the bust line like this. Then from that point, I'm going to measure 2 inches apart. I'm measuring 2 inches apart for the other 2 points I've made on the neckline. So the distance on the bust line is 2 inches apart, while the distance on the neckline is 1.5 inches apart. So I've connected these lines. Then I will be slashing these lines from the neckline. So my arrow is pointing down, so it means I'll slash from the neckline. Now I want to close up my underarm dart, so I would cut open this first line. So I'm slashing from the neckline to the bust line. I won't cut completely out. So once I slash this, it would enable me close up my underarm darts. Okay, so I'll be closing this and holding it down with my masking tape. So once I close my underarm dart, you notice that there is a shifting of the side seam. Okay, so I'm going to reconnect the shifted line up to the chest line. That is why I have an extra paper left after my real measurement. So when I connect this back, I would now cut off the excess I have. I'll go ahead and slash the remaining 2 lines. Okay, so I'm slashing from the neckline to the bust line. So after doing that, I'm going to use a tape to hold down and close my underarm darts. After slashing, I have to spread to introduce volume. So I brought in a fresh paper and I placed it underneath my slashes. So it's going to start from the center front. So just watch what I'm doing. So the essence of slashing is to introduce volume. So I've used a tape to hold down my first slash. Okay, so now I would decide how much volume I want to introduce. So I want to go with 1.5 inches. You can decide to slash to spread by 1 inch, 1.5 inches, or 2 inches, depending on what you want. So for me to do the next slash, watch what I'm doing. I'm going to this second slash, I'm cutting through the bust line. Just watch what I'm doing so that it can shift easily for me, because it's not shifting to get to where I want it to be. So I slashed through the bust line. You see what I did? And I'm going to tape it down on the 1.5 inches measurement I've taken. I want to introduce 1.5 inches between each slash line. So that's what I have done here. So I'll repeat this again so you see what I just explained. So I'm cutting through the bust line for this slash. Just watch what I'm doing on the bust line, but I won't cut completely off so that it can move easily. When I measure my 1.5 inches, I'm going to just tape it down at that point. So I'm spreading with 1.5 inches. So that's what I'll do for all the slash points. So I'm measuring out my 1.5 inches and I'm going to tape this down on that point, and I'll do the same for the last piece. I'll just measure 1.5 inches. Okay, I don't need to slash through this. I'll just measure my 1.5 inches and just tape it down there so you can see what I have. So I'm just going to extend my slash lines. Just what I'm doing, I'm just extending it up like this so I can know exactly where I've added and what I've added. Okay, so I'm just extending this just a little bit up this way. So after doing this, what I'm actually going to do, what this is for the pleating on the neckline. Okay, so I'm just pleating from one point of what I added to the other points to match and meet the other point. So here I was actually pleating towards my shoulder area. Okay, but in reality what I wanted is to pleat towards the center front. Okay, so I actually did the correct thing I wanted to do on my fabric. So when you're pleating, you're going to be pleating towards the center, unless what you want is to pleat away from the center front. So but on my pattern I was actually pleating away from the center front, so I would actually I eventually corrected that on my fabric. Okay, so but what I'm doing here is to get my exact neckline. So I'm pleating so that when I trim out the neckline, I would have the exact neckline I had before I slashed and spread. Do you understand? So just watch what I'm doing and you would understand. After pleating, I'm just going to retrace out my neckline. After doing that, I'm just going to cut out the excess paper I have that is not needed. I'll also cut out the neckline. So I've cut it out and I've removed my pins. So this is what I have and this is what I'm going to cut on my fabric. So I'm just using tape to hold down the pleated part on the paper underneath. So what I'm going to do now will be to cut on my fabric. I've placed my paper on my fabric. My fabric is on fold. The front is cut on fold, so I've pinned down. I've already added my allowance for sewing on my pattern, so I'm just cutting exactly what I have. If you have not added allowance on your pattern, please, as you're cutting, remember to add your allowance for sewing. So before I cut the neckline, I'm also folding in those pleated parts, the part I need to pleat, so that I can cut on the neckline. I can cut out the neckline. So what I did on the paper, I'm also doing it on the fabric. So I'll just cut out my neckline. Now that I've cut out my neckline, I'm going to remove my pins and open it up like this. Before I remove my pattern, I'm going to notch those places where I folded. Do you understand? From the places I added the 1.5 inches extra, I'm going to notch them so that what I have out is going to reflect on both sides. Remember, my fabric is on fold and I'm going to be pleating the two sides. Okay, pleating the two sides towards the center front. So I'm notching so that when I remove this paper, I would know exactly where to pleat and where to fold. So after doing that, I'm going to remove my pins and remove the pattern. So this is what I have. You see my notches. It will help me know where to pleat. So I just placed this pattern to find my center front. So the first notch should be 1.5 inches away from the center front. Then you start pleating. You take the second notch and pleat it towards the center on the first notch. Okay, so you'll be taking the notch before the one you're going to pleat to, and then that's how you make your pleats towards the center front. So after pleating towards the center front for one side, I would continue and repeat the same thing to the other side. So you're taking one notch to the notch in front of it. That's how you're pleating, because you're pleating towards the center front. If you don't do it this way, your notches, your pleating will face different direction or even face away from the center front, but that's not what I want here. So if you check the thumbnail, you see that the pleating is going towards the center front. So that is why I did it like this. After pleating, I'm going to sew on the pleats to hold it down. Then I'll use a facing I cut from my pattern before slashing to turn the neckline. Then you attach your back bodice to it if you're making a top, or you can completely make a dress with it. So my spacing in between the center front is this big because I measured from the neckline when it was folded 1.5 inches. If you don't want it this big, you can measure 1 inch away from the center of the neckline. Okay, so this is what it looks like at this point. You can see how beautiful it looks, and I've already used my facing to turn the neckline. So for this, I made it into a dress. So I've attached my skirt part, and this is what my dress looks like. For the sleeve, I made a split or a slit sleeve, and I have a detailed tutorial on how to make this sleeve on this channel, and I'll be dropping the link in the description box. So guys, we've come to the end of today's tutorial on how to make a pleated neckline top or dress. Thank you guys for watching. To all returning subscribers, you guys are amazing, and if this is your first time coming across my channel and you have not subscribed, please click on the subscribe button to subscribe now, and don't forget to like this video.